we create a new flow to do our REST API calls in. So I click create, choose an instant cloud flow. It will work in any flow type, but it's more easy to test in this manually triggered flows. So then I click create. We need an API to connect to. You can see a REST API call as a Google search. You do a request, for example, on cat pictures, and then you get some results back. In business standards, it's usually payroll system, CRM system that we want to connect to and grab some customer data or even update them. For today, you can go to the course page. The link is in the description. Here, the API address, I'll click that. This is the data that we are automating today. We will treat them as customer data, although they are Star Wars data. Here, I want to look up customer IDs and then get these information back. For example, name, height, mass, and birth year. You can see this format. It looks a little bit weird, but it's not. It's very efficient to send data to. This is the response that we get back. This is a JSON. A JSON, you can see that with the curly brackets in the start and in the end, and then you'll have a lot of key value pairs. The key here is the name, then the value is Skywalker. The key here is height, and then the value is 172. Similarly, we have some arrays down here. You can see films. This person will have five films attached to him. Let's go down here and grab this URL. I want to show you something cool. So I open up a new tab and then I paste in the address. This is also known as an endpoint because a REST API call uses a URL to perform the request. And this is the response that we get back down here. And let me show you the very cool thing that is, if I change this one up here to 11, I click enter, then we will get another customer back. So we can use this URL, make it dynamic to do multiple REST API calls and update a customer database. In our case, it will be an Excel sheet. Let's go do that. So I go to Power Automate again. I'll click New Step. And here I'll search for an HTTP. The reason here is that a REST API call is often known as an HTTP request. And here I'll choose the HTTP, like this. The method, here I can choose between get, post, patch, delete. Usually you want to do a get. Sometimes you want to do a post. That is if you want to update data in the actual database, or a delete if you want to delete a record. I'll choose get. The URL, we actually had that. That was this one. Now click save and we go test the flow. So I click test. I'll do this, run the flow, click done, and it ran successfully. Open up this, scroll a little bit down. First of all, we have a status code of 200. That is usually just a success, so well done. And then this body, this is the result that come back. So I just search for number 1, this was the address, and then I get the customer data back and can use that in my flow. Let us just mark everything, Control C, Control A, Control C to copy this. We will use it in a little while. But first, let me just show you two things. Again, I can do another search. If I just search for person 11, I'll do this. And here you can see that we now have Anakin Skywalker. If you didn't copy out the JSON, the body before, please do it now. We will need to use it. It doesn't matter, so just Control A, Control C. Let me also show you another status code. We saw only the successes, that is 2. This number 17 doesn't exist for some reason. That could be if you looked up a wrong customer number on your API that is in your system. Then you will see my flow failed. Let me open it. You can see I now have a status code of 404 and the body says detail not found. We also want to do some error handling here in our flow. So let me click edit. The first thing we will do is that we want to have a new step. And here I can have a compose. And I want to interpret the data that I got up from here. So one way to do it, you can see I can get the entire body, but I actually want to go a little bit deeper. Let's say I want the name out, for example, the height and the mass. Then I will do an expression. And here I'll say, I want the body, and then I want to go into the HTTP action. Then I want to move a little bit down because I want to grab the name that was a key in the actual JSON. That will look like this. So hard brackets, single quotation marks, name. I'll click OK, and the expression is up here. Let us just fix this because this 17 doesn't exist. So let's just go with Luke Skywalker again. I'll click save. I will test it manually. I will run the flow. I'll click done. And down here in the compose, you can see that we now were able to grab the Luke Skywalker. Very easy. But we had to write this expression. Let's do it in a much nicer way. So I'll just click plus between the HTTP and the compose. I'll click add an action. Here I'll have a parse JSON. The format that we used, that was actually a JSON. So here I'll take parse JSON. The content, that is the body that comes from up here. Those ones are the results. We now need to generate a schema. That is how our JSON looks. So I click generate from sample, and here I'll press Ctrl V because I copied one of the results from before. I'll click done. Now it will be very easy. I just go down to compose. I delete this one here, and now you can see that I can just hard code in. I can say name, then I can grab the name from the dynamic content. I'll do a new line, and here I can say height. I will not do each one of these, but this is so easy to use. And here I can say mass and do this. Let's try to save it and see how easy that was, and it's actually that we can succeed. So in the compose, you can see here now I have the name Luke Skywalker, height 172, mass 77. Similarly, I could replace it up here. Let me just edit it. Could replace this with a 10 and perform the actual HTTP request or REST API call. So here, and let me just save this, run it, click done. And again, here you will have Obi-Wan Kenobi, height 182 and mass 77. Now we want to do a dynamic solution. We don't want to sit and update one item. So let's look at some data. Here I have my course site. Click to download the Excel book. That will take you to my OneDrive. Click the three dots and click download. We will place this on our desktop just to inspect it. So I'll move it out here. Double click to open it. So this one is a sheet with a lot of customer IDs. I want to update the name, the height, the mass, the birth, and I'll write a log message. I'll also want to do error handling. Remember, the ID 17 didn't exist, so we want to combat for that. And let's go create it. So what I will do, I'll close this. I will need to go to my OneDrive because I need this Excel sheet where we do these requests from. I'll need to place that in either OneDrive, SharePoint, Dropbox, or Box. It needs to be accessible in the cloud for Power Automate. I'll go to my root of my OneDrive folder. I'll go into Live, and here I'll have my customer data. So if you should do the same, it will look like this. Let me just delete this, and you just move your data over like this. So now we have it here. I didn't do anything with it. The important part here is also that these data, they need to be formatted as tables. Otherwise, we can't access it either. So now we have it. We go to Power Automate and we click Edit. The first one we will get rid of is the compose. We will not have it printed out here. We want to print it back to Excel. So I click Delete. What we will do is first we need to grab out the Excel data. So in the beginning, before the HTTP, I'll choose Add an Action. Here I'll say List rows present in the table. What this does, it gets us all the rows in the table of the Excel book. So I'll click this dropdown. The location, that is OneDrive for Business. The document library, that is OneDrive. The file, well, I placed that in my live folder. Where you placed it is up to you. Just go find it now. Choose Customer XLX. It's formatted as a table, so I can find it here. Then we need to iterate through it, and that is because we take each row one by one, and then we perform an HTTP request. So go up here, then you will have an add an action. I'll find and apply to each. And what this does is iterating through a collection one by one. So I want the output from this. So I go in here, and then I'll take the value. Now I need to move these two in here, and because these two are dependent on each other, what I will do is that I'll just open here and make it not dependent for now of the HTTP. Then I can move the HTTP in, and I'll move the Parse JSON, and I'll need to have the body back here. So now for each one of these rows, I'll do an HTTP request, and I'll also do a JSON parse. But if I did it here, and I open this one here, you can see I will do a request for person number 10. What I will do here is that I will delete this and then do a request on the ID. So that is the dynamic content. That is why we got the Excel data. Now I will do dynamic REST API calls. I will pass them just like here. That will work fine. But after we are done, we want to update the Excel sheet. So let me just do this. So for each one of these calls, I'll have an add an action. I'll find update a row and have it in here. Again, I'll need to find this Excel book. It would be nice if it just remembered, or if we had the option to. Sadly, it doesn't, but that's okay. We will practice our skills. I'll go find all the data, again, the table. And now we need to specify a key column and a key value. The key column, that comes from here. That is the idea. Then I want to say, and because these are uniquely named, I can find it. Let me just open it over here. You can see that this is a unique column, that is key values. And this is clever. This could be customer IDs or social security numbers. So, and what I want to do, let me go back here. I want to match them to this list row, that is the value that I'm iterating to. So I know that each data will get into the correct row. So what you will do here is to scroll a little bit down and choose the ID. Now I can fill things in. I don't want to fill in the ID. What I want to do is that I want to fill in a name. So that will be this one. Here I have the height. I'll fill that in. The mass as well. I'll fill that in. And the birth, that will be a little bit down below. We could have taken each one of these customer data. We also have a log, but we will wait a bit by updating that. Now let's go test it and see that we can actually update it. And we also need to do a little bit of error handling. Remember, we had the ID 17. That one gave us an error. What will happen here when it has ran in a little while is that number 17, it can perform that, and it will jump to the next item. So we'll need to make some good logging, and we'll talk about best practice in logging the results of these REST API calls. But I think this will take probably like a minute or something. But imagine that you will have to do these in a system where you had to look up in the actual UIs. This is much faster. And here you can see we have an error. Let's open it. So this one went fine. You can see fine, fine, fine. So I go to next fail. That is number 17. And because this number 17 failed, it up here in the HTTP, it has not performed the Parse JSON, the updated row. If I go in here, we will get the status code 404, not found. So, and if I go back here to my actual results, you can see that we now have all the data. We have the names, we have the heights. Some of them are unknowns, but that is just because in our system, they are unknowns. Remember the Wilhoffs. Then we'll have a mass and a birth. Here you can see this 17 hasn't got updated. So let's do some nice error handling and talk about what we need to do here to do this. I will just delete all the data. so we can see that it updates afterwards. So now I click edit. And what I need to do here is that I will look at the status code, and that is because I get a status code from this HTTP. I can get a 200, that was a success, but I could also get a 404, that was an error. So what I will do here is that right after here, I'll click plus, I'll click add an action, and here I'll choose a switch. I could choose a condition, but a switch is nice because then I can combat all the error codes that I can get from my HTTP. We will only do it for these two ones here, but you can do it for more status code. Choose a switch. A switch works as I can give an expression, and then we can say if that value is equal to something, then we'll do this. Otherwise, we can add another case, and we can add a default case. But let's take it step by step. Up here, I will choose the status code from the HTTP. So that was empty. Now I can say if this one equals to 200, that was a success. And let me just rename this case then to case 200, success. Then I want to do something. So what do I want to do here? I want to parse a JSON. Because now I know I have some data to pass out. I also want to update the row, so I move it in here. And here, let me just also update this row here. So I'll just rename this. Update a row, and I will say 200 success here as well. Let us open it. Now we can update the log message, and here I can just say success. So now we have done everything if this actually equal to 200. So I can add a new case, plus. This case will be my 404 not found. So I'll say 404 not found. These namings, those are just best practices. That is, if we come back or your fellow developer come back, we can easily see what's going on. You don't have to add them to make it work, but it looks nicer, and it is nicer. So now I say, if this status code equal 404, what do I then want to do? Well, I will add an action because I will update the row, and this one will be with a error message. So I then need to find it over here again. I think if you can get your head around what we're actually doing here with these API calls and handling the responses, you come a long way in your automation journey. So just rewind the video if things went a little too fast. Again, I'll look at the ID from up here and list rows present in a table like this. Now I will just do a log, and here I will say business exception ID not found. And here it's not an exception linked to our flow. We did everything right. It's just that this third-party system, this ID doesn't exist over there. So what I will also do is that it's always best practice to have a default case, and that is because we can see a lot of other error codes and we want to handle them if those occur. They will not do it now, we know that, but it's best practice, so always do the cases and then have a default case that catches everything else. So choose add an action. And here I will have an update a row like this. And let me just rename these two so we actually have, I'll do, here I can say 404 not found over here. And in this one here, I will say unrecognized or something. So I will say update a row unrecognized like this. I'll find the exact same thing again, and let me just, it will load, otherwise if I get a little impatient, you can see that sometimes it takes a few seconds, and often the solution here is just to, if this happens, if you see this load and load and load, sometimes it's easier just to delete the actual action. So I'll do this. and then just add it again. It's not something that you can do. It's not something that you have done wrong. It's just the way it is. Now you can see it showed up instantly. So don't worry, and let me rename it again. I think these live builds where I teach a topic is great because you'll see all the actual pitfalls or the struggles that we can face as automation developers. So I'll do this and I'll fill it in just as before, and here you'll have this. Now I can say exception, and then I could, for example, have a status code. I can say unrecognized status code, and then I can actually have the actual status code because we have it right here. In our case, we will not go into the default branch, and that is because we only have status codes of 200 and 404. One thing that we will need to do, you can see this switch here. It comes right after the HTTP, and when an error occurs from up here, we need to say that we want to run the switch and let the switch handle the errors and not Power Automate. So let me just do this. So what you'll do is to click these 3 dots here, configure run after, and then we will say whatever happens here, we want to run the switch. Otherwise, it will take the next iteration. So I'll click done here. I'll click save. And let's try to actually run this. And this is, as I said, it's such a cool technique. If you can do this and understand this, it will come to your benefit. So I will just fast forward the video so we can inspect the results. There you go. We now succeeded. Now we can see that we had no fails. That is because we let our switch handle it. Let's inspect the actual sheet and see that we can handle everything. We got a lot of successes, and here, there you go. We now have row number 17 with the ID 17, business exception, ID not found. You need to learn more Microsoft Power Automate, and right here is the next advanced lesson for you.